everyone. Welcome to the Respiratory Care Board meeting on October 13th, 2017. And I want to welcome everyone, call this meeting to order. What I would like is, for the benefit of the audience and the camera recording, if we can start on my left, then you can call out your name. Everyone knows who's on the board and your role. Thank you.
Hi, Judy McKeever, board member.
Mark Goldstein, board member.
Rebecca Franzoya, board member.
Mary Ellen Early, board member.
Tom Wagner, Vice President.
Alan Roth, President. We have a quorum in order to be able to start the meeting. Like to introduce yourself?
Sorry, Mr. President. Fred Chanyu, DCA Legal Counsel.
Stephanie Nunez, Executive Officer.
Christine Molina, Respiratory Care Board staff.
Thank you. I have a statement to make about public comment. Public comment will be accepted after each agenda item and toward the end of the agenda for public comment not related to any particular agenda item. We can set time limits should it be necessary for any particular item on the agenda in order to get through the agenda on an appropriate amount of time. Having said that, I would like to ask anyone in the audience if they have any public comment they would like to make relative to the board meeting before we get started. The first order of business is the June 30th meeting, and I would like for any discussion about the minutes, any corrections or additions that people feel they need to make relative to the minutes. Do I have any corrections or additions that need to be made to the minutes or there were omissions? Yes.
It says members present. Member Sam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good eyes, good eyes.
Way to go.
Okay. Having made those amendments to the minutes, I would like to call for an acceptance, a second of the minutes. Do we need to vote on that or just verbal?
You would need to vote on that, Mr. President.
Okay.
Second.
Second, okay.
Mr. President, sorry. Public comments before the vote.
Okay. Any public comments relative to the vote on the minutes of June 30th? Seeing none, we'll put it to a vote. Judy?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Having approved, we'll move on to item 3, which is the fiscal report.
Sure. So attached we have the board's revenue and expenditures with actual figures from 2015-16 through fiscal year 16-17 and projected amounts for this fiscal year. Actual expenditures through September 30th, 2017 were not available to the board at the time of this mailing or up to the time of this meeting. We have switched accounting platforms and we've gone to something called Fiscal. And so they're getting familiar with it and the new procedures that are included with it. The board's fund condition has actual figures through fiscal year 16-17 and projections thereafter. You will note that board staff have included revenue projections from the pending regulation package that will provide step increases to the renewal fee over the next 3 years. Provided the regulation package is approved for implementation by next July, the board's fund structure will be realigned to balance revenues with expenditures by fiscal year 2021. And then also included in your attachment is an outline of where the regulation package is. It was started the process in July, and it is moving through the process, and we do expect it to be completed on time for the July implementation.
Stephanie, just two questions. One, after it gets approved by the DCA director and it gets forwarded to the agency, it says it goes through the process again?
Yes. It's a new process. I'm not sure why they changed it exactly, but they know that it needs to be renewed and looked at. There is quite a bit of duplicity.
But we've gone through the first part,
Yes,
which is the good part.
yes. I would say it's done in thirds, and the first third is done.
Some more questions relative to the budgeted amount for 2017 and 18. On the fingerprints, going from a projected $7,000 to a budgeted $55,000 for fingerprints.
Uh-huh. That's really just a reimbursement amount. We collect money for people who still use hard cards, fingerprints, and it just gets reimbursed right out. Whatever we take in, it goes out.
Okay. And for equipment, I know one of the things we talked about in the strategic plan is making sure that the board and the staff have the equipment to facilitate breeze and do all the things to keep our metrics in line. And that, it was listed as $20,000 for 17-18, but in budgeted, it is a $0 amount. It got zeroed out.
Well, budgeted identifies how much, am I correct? Is budgeted is what the CalSTARS has allowed for it.
Correct.
So we didn't budget for it, but we are spending it out of our existing budget through savings in other places.
Okay. I just that it was like, drop an item to zero when we discussed how we need to keep the metrics going and stay within thing with getting equipment and doing that thing. Okay. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Welcome.
Any questions from board members relative to this fiscal report? As you see on the report, how important our decisions were relative to, as painful as they were, to increase the licensing fees. And even at that, seeing that our reserve months are quite on the thin side, even with that. So it was a hard decision to increase the fees, but as you see, quite necessary one in order to keep ourselves fiscally viable and to maintain the functions of the board. Any discussions from board members relative to this item, or any questions for Stephanie relative to this? Any comments from anyone in the audience who would like to make any comment relative to the fiscal report as just presented? Hearing no comments, I'd like a motion to...
I'd like to make a motion to accept the fiscal report.
Second.
Please, you're on the far end today, so you
Aye.
get the first.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is carried relative to the fiscal report. Next item is enforcement performance measures and statistics. Want to talk about that?
Sure. So what is presented to you is the Q3 and Q4 report for last fiscal year. So that's pretty much January through June. of last fiscal year, of us meeting our performance measures. There was only, again, as you recall, there's the formal discipline cycle, performance measure number 4, that includes the Attorney General time, which is one that's very difficult to meet. And we have met it a few times already. And again, we met it once, but on one of the quarters we did not. I think it was quarter 3, but quarter 4 we did meet it. And all of our other targets are still being met.
I think this is a very excellent way to look at metrics and understand that we can successfully review cases, have the enforcement people do it in a efficient way and in a rapid way in order for any issues that come up relative to our licensees and our people who are applying for licenses can get a hearing, can get information in an appropriate amount of time, as you see in these metrics. Again, the one item that is not under our control relates to the time that it takes for the Attorney General's office to facilitate their cases. But that these metrics are well to be proud of for Stephanie and for the board members and for the staff that work diligently in order to make these numbers as they are, considering the number of cases that come before us in a given year. So I want to congratulate everyone there at the staff and to you, Stephanie, for making these metrics successful.
Thank you, but I just have to say for the record, my staff is so incredibly valuable and they make this happen. So.
Is there any comment from the audience relative to the performance measures and the statistics for the third and fourth quarter of 2017? Hearing none, any discussion from board members relative to these metrics or any comments you would like to make relative to these comments?
I just wanted to say great improvement. I think we're doing great, and kudos to your staff. Please pass that on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. A motion to accept the statistics and the measures.
So
Second.
moved.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay. Again, pass on through the staff to everyone to say thank you and a job well done.
We'll do that. Thank you.
Papers in order. The next is item number 5, which is the legislation and of interest update of what's been happening. And the previous meeting, we talked about issues and legislative things of interest of what we were to watch and what we were to approve if amended and what we opposed. And this is an update now that the legislature is off service, if we call it that. Is that what? Is that
Out of
progression?
session, right. Mm-hmm.
And that bills that have potential have gone forward and bills that have now become part of the 2-year cycle. So
There, as you'll notice on the report, there are a significant number of the bills that we've been watching either will become 2-year bills or will no longer be active. We will, of course, keep an eye on those. There were 3 particular bills that we are that did make it to the governor. AB 208, which we have taken an opposed position on, and we have sent a letter to the governor requesting veto, is still pending as of yesterday. As well as AB 391, which we had a support if amended position. That's also still pending. The final, and probably the most important, is SB 796, which is the board sunset extension. Since preparing this report, was actually approved by the governor on October the 8th. So that's fantastic news.
thank you. I want to make note of the fact that for the hard work of the people on the board to make presentations and to collect data, and to the presentations of Stephanie and myself at the legislature and the legislative liaisons that helped during this case to have the people understand the necessary things relative to what respiratory care is and why we exist. And in times of pressures from many other forces to successfully come forward and have our board as a continuation, when we've already seen that in several other states, the respiratory care boards have been folded in or disbanded because of their lack of action or their will to succeed. So I want to say that this is a very important measure for us, and that I implore all of us board members to make sure that over the next 4 years, when we look at our strategic plan and we go before the legislature again to say, this is what we've accomplished over these 4 years, these next 4 years, that we can tick off many of the items that we were successful in doing, that we'll be able to do that again, and the legislature will say, job well done, and continue with our authority to perform and protect the public and expand the role of respiratory care within the state. So I want to implore all of you to understand why this is so important for us. The second thing which I want to just mention is about the Medi-Cal, 391. Although we had put in information to support it if amended, that language did not make it into the bill. But what is important is the fact that the asthma prevention idea and the idea of getting to someone's home to see patients as a preventive measure in order to keep them out of the emergency room and track people before they get ill enough to have to get hospitalized will be a major step forward. And we hope that respiratory care practitioners will be part of that as being one of those practitioners that will be allowed to be able to do that teaching, even though we're not specified in the language of the bill in order to be able to do that. So that's encouraging. The analysis of the return on investment is huge to keep some of the 5 million people within the state of California out of the hospital. And we know that particularly here in the Central Valley, asthma is a particularly hazardous condition because of the air quality, and we not have to go no further than outside the door right now to understand how it affects people of all ages, and even those people who don't have asthma, COPD, and other lung issues are affected by these wildfires, and how it's necessary for us to keep our focus and have people understand what it is that respiratory care practitioners do. So that's any comments from the audience relative to the legislation of interest? If not, I thank you for the review, and we'll move on to item number 6. And let me say that one of the things that is important about this relates to the work that we did relative to conditions and how the board uniformly treats decisions. About 5 or 6 years ago, we did part of reviewing our disciplinary criteria and try to make it more and more uniform relative to decision making, relative to how things are, so we can be consistent from one case to the next. And this is just a corollary of moving forward of what we talked about relative to the strategic plan for this proposed legislation move forward. So I hope everyone has had an opportunity to take a look at it, and I open this up for discussion for the people on the board to talk about this, because this is an important issue for consistency. I know when we write our reviews after we see cases, there's times when we need more clarification relative to what we need to do to be consistent relative to cases. And this is a legislative addition that will help clarify the issue and make it more consistent throughout. So, any discussions relative to the board members? Yes, Judy.
Just for clarification, this does not include people who have retired their license and want to get back into respiratory. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct. Actually, there really are no provisions to return after you retire your license other than reapply and meet the current requirements.
Okay.
So we make that really clear before someone requests that particular status.
Okay, thank you.
I think that we have found in reviewing cases, we have found where we have put as a measure of part of the probation or the reinstatement a certain amount of education, or when there was practice issues, whether there was more continuing education. This furthers it along to ensure that in some ways the competency of the practitioner is still there after a period of time of non-working or being out of the field. Mark, you have? All right. Any comment from anyone in the audience relative to the board-sponsored proposed legislation? If I have no further discussion, I would like a motion to accept this and to move this along with the executive officer to the remedies that are necessary to get this within the legislative labyrinth.
And to grant the executive committee authority to make non-substantive changes if necessary. Motion to that effect.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Judy,
Aye.
you're in the prime position today.
I keep forgetting. Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Okay. Next item is, our strategic plan. We worked very diligently on this with the help of the staff and with Solid. And you see that the strategic plan has many items there. Things that, as I previously said, show where the board wants to go over the next 4 years, and the things that are necessary in order to, one, protect the public, expand the roles of respiratory care, and to ensure the safety of everyone involved relative to respiratory care. One of the things that will happen relative to this is the fact that there are more items on here that need more in-depth work, and over this next year, I'm going to, and Stephanie and I and Tom are going to ask for the help of the committees in order to work out the plans in order to make the items that are in the strategic plan alive. How we can move forward and actually achieve these goals so that 4 years from now, when whoever is the president of the board, where Stephanie goes before the legislature, we can present to the legislature saying, we've accomplished all these items. We were at hearings where there were boards that had direct questions from people in the legislature who said, here's your strategic plan for the last 4 years, and I only see 1 or 2 items from the whole strategic plan that have been accomplished. And questioning very vigorously why those boards did not accomplish more. And I think all these items are very doable. All these items are important, both for the expansion of services, for the protection of patients, and to move the profession forward. And to see that there is a great future for respiratory care and that we can be the leader, again, in respiratory care for the country. So I'd like to have you take a look at this, have an idea for yourselves. If there are the committees that you're on and you like to change your committee or want to participate, one of the things that will happen with the committee work will, on some of the committees, we'll have to be able to have hearings and open discussion relative to items to flesh out the plan and the steps that will be necessary to accomplish those. And so there will be work that'll be involved behind the scenes, and there'll be work because of the Meeting Act and a number of board members that will have to be together in order to discuss this, to be able to have open meetings in order to do this. So think about your assignments, your committee assignments. Think whether or not you'd like to stay on that committee, or would you like to move to another committee or participate in more than one committee, and to let Stephanie and myself or Tom know what you'd like to do so that we can start planning for these meetings and starting looking at the agenda items that we can get to and plan for, and also plan what things may need down the road a legislative approval for some of these items, or whether there can be done through regulation. That
May I ask a question? What are the current committees that we have?
Oh, well, let's see. We have the executive committee. We have the professional licensing committee, which is covers education. We have a disaster committee. We have an outreach committee, and enforcement.
And is that people just on this board?
Yes.
Okay, because I'll,
And we try to keep it to 2 members typically.
okay.
If there was an outpouring, request for anyone to serve on any one of these, make adjustments with their current strategic plan. And it just helps if you only have the 2, you can talk off record. If you have more than 2, you have to notice a meeting and have a meeting.
Thank you.
Further discussion relative to,
I'm sorry, I have one more. As I was reading through this, number 7, increasing the number of CEU audits to 10% to ensure compliance. I know in the past the audits have been kind of connected to our budget, and I was wondering what is the average cost of an audit? I mean, to me, I would think it wouldn't be much. You just mail in your CEUs and it's done. But as far as office work and stuff, is there kind of a mean cost to an audit?
We have not calculated that. I can do that if you'd like.
I'm just curious, you know.
Yeah, it's one staff person. It's not her entire job.
Uh-huh.
So I'd have to calculate how much time she spends on it.
And what is our current percentage of audits? I know it fluctuates year to year.
It's about 5, but we're already moving up towards the 10 now.
Okay, good. All right, thank you.
well, one of the points for the education committee is to take a look at how we can see what CEUs are appropriate, what we do have language relative to organizations that are approved relative to CEUs, but there is confusion as to what directly relates to respiratory care sometimes, and that is one of the things to which we're going to need to have people look at and clarify. As you saw in the language, the whole sense of the confusion relative to the certifications that people have, like the ACLS, PALS, and NRP, and the recertifications and how that falls out, and whether or not things that you do for work that are work required are those eligible for CEUs if they're a work requirement as versus an educational requirement, and what kind of venues are appropriate, meaning, you know, online, live, etc., video. You know, there's a lot more forums available, and to have something that's approved that we can say that is a real education situation that someone has learned and is part of being competent to do their job. Having finished,
I just have one thing. Stephanie, I wanted to say that after our brainstorming session and discussions that we had going on and ideas coming from all directions, I was very pleased to see the final product and how cohesive it all became. And I know it was due to you and your staff in putting things together that discussed, and I want to thank you.
Thank you.
Good work.
very coherent. Any further comment from the audience relative to the strategic plan? If not, I would like to have a motion to accept the strategic plan as been presented.
I'd like
So
to make
moved.
go ahead. Make a motion to approve the board's 2017 to 2021 strategic plan as submitted.
Second. Second.
Judy?
Aye.
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 Welcome. For the for the camera, can you introduce yourself now?
Now you can hear me. Okay. Sam Kabushin, excuse me for being late. I haven't figured out this town yet. Thank you.
Just for your own edification, there was a correction to the spelling of your name on the minutes.
Yes, thank you. As well as on the business cards too that was shipped to me. So we managed it finally. Thank you.
Mr. President, just wasn't sure, couldn't hear your vote, and also the gentleman's, Sam's a vote as well. We couldn't capture it, I don't think. Could you just repeat your vote? Thank you.
Did say yes. I voted yes on that.
Yes, for me too. Okay, the next item, number 8, educational objectives, clinical education, baccalaureate degree, and continuing education. And in this, the packet is the Committee on Accreditation for Respiratory Care Requirements. As you have read this, one of the things that is important to make note of is the fact that COARC, as our regulatory educational organization, has moved as of January 1, 2018 to put in place about baccalaureate programs and requirements for baccalaureate programs across the country. And that as of December 31st, 2017, they will no longer entertain any petitions or efforts to accreditate associate degree programs. And one of the things that COARC is doing is trying to spell out what it means to get a baccalaureate program in respiratory care. The three elements to the stool, so to speak, is education, management, and research. And particular items there related to disease management, health education, and doing research in the field of respiratory care. You'll notice in that there is not a requirement for an absolute requirement for clinical education in an advanced level for a baccalaureate program. Although in the United States, there are programs that specify specifically advanced practice activities. And having said that, COARC is looking at having an advanced practice element that will probably be a master's level program or education programs moving forward on the master's level. But they know that although there are some, I believe it's now 6 programs in the United States that do a master's program that relate to education, but also specialized clinical practice, neonatal, critical care. There's actually one program in Texas that will offer a master's degree in clinical practice that you do not need a bachelor's degree, but years of experience as a clinical therapist. So there are quite a few variations relative to what is coming out, and COARC is trying to get a handle on it. But COARC is now formally coming out with the idea of encouraging baccalaureate programs within the United States, and also to some framework relative to what's necessary to be part of that program. Having been part of a program at Modesto Junior College, which was part of the pilot program to offer a baccalaureate program, and to have COARC come and look at what was being offered and how things are being offered, and the concentrations that were necessary and the number of hours that were necessary in order to establish a baccalaureate program was quite impressive. The other thing is that COARC will also now use as a standard the RRT examinations as a basis for their continued accreditation or probationary status. And they will be eliminating the educational, the work requirement that was essentially being used to say what was the status of the student 6 months out, whether or not they were employed or not, which in sometimes would have been a very good idea as to the makeup and to see whether areas were oversaturated relative to graduates which is in some places here in California, and other places that were hurting for graduates and the movement of people. But they didn't specify what it was to be working. And so if you signed on with a travel company or you signed on as a hospital as a per diem, work once a month or even less, you were considered employed. And so that sort of became a meaningless statistic to follow up. So I just wanted to take a look at, this discussion about the baccalaureate program, about clinical education, what it means to put things forward. And we talked about it in the strategic plan, how important it was for us to make sure, when we looked at the workforce study and saw that the student was getting his efforts catch can. Oh, who was in the ICU that day? Or maybe that person didn't even want to have a student. Or did the person have the opportunity to get the fullest of education? Or was it consistent between one practitioner and another practitioner? And we saw from the workforce study that overall the thought processes were that the graduate was not always totally prepared to work because of the type of experience that they had in clinical times. And that one of the things is for our strategic plan, going back to that, is to make things more formal relative to schools and making accountable to the clinical preceptors and the faculty in order to ensure that the students have the kinds of experience to have them succeed and be ready for work upon graduation. So we should look at this and discuss this a little further relative to also what it involves relative to the education that one achieves after one is licensed. There are programs that are out there that, the competency test when they complete the CEUs are, did you attend it? Is it Tuesday? Is not a real reflection on, competency and the questions that are endemic in some of these programs and the for-profit programs that are for. And I say that if we take a look at the great efforts from the CSRC and the ARC to look even at the ethics program and to see how detailed and organized that kind of workshop is, and the kinds of information that they present and the kinds of questions they ask really show what competency is about, what education is about, and why that's important. And people may grumble about it, but it's one of those kind of things that I hope that the students, upon taking it first, and the practitioners that take it every other cycle, will understand why it's so important, so that we have fewer cases that come before us. And if you look at those statistics that are presented in the CSRC, those graphs of the kinds of cases that come before us and the kinds of clinical cases that come before us and the questions that are presented within that framework are so important. And we should have more programs that are like that, and that I hope that we will move forward relative to that, with the Education Committee and framing up tighter what is continuing education for us and what we view as being correct as continuing education. This is a framework to start looking at that. Comments from other board members relative to this idea and taking a look at.
I had one thing as I was going through this for the institutional resources. Is there, I didn't see anything in here, but I know some of the private for-profit schools that came to the hospital I just retired from, the students had to go out and seek a clinical rotation on their own. And I think that I don't see included in here that it's mandatory for a school to have set up relationships for their students to go to have clinicals at. And I think there should be, because you've got students driving 3 and 4 hours to try and find a hospital that will accept students while they're in this private hospital and they have to get their hours in. But unless the school has a relationship with certain hospitals, how do they find a place? They can't just drive 4 or 5 hours to every hospital in the area or California trying to find a place. I think that should be included. And if I missed it, please correct me.
No, but as the number of schools have increased, the number of slots and the availability, essentially, the hospitals are doing it gratis for, sure, they have a contract that they establish with the school, but there is no remuneration that the hospital gets relative to taking on. In fact, as there are probably schools that can no longer get contracts renewed for hospitals because there are too many students. Staff was complaining that this past summer when I saw students, there were 3 different colleges coming while I was there into the NICU. Far too many students. That was more than a one-on-one with each of the staff. And, that limits the exposure, that limits the learning time, that limits understanding and the questioning and all the things that are happening in. And so schools need to assess relationships with hospitals, but also to assess what other sites may be appropriate for students to go to, whether it be long-term care facilities, centers, or even now the physicians that have pulmonary practices that have outpatient clinics with them, or even, Medicare programs that offer services within health satellite, that sites there that can talk about asthma education, etc. So they have to be creative to be able to look where someone can get the total of the experience. Yes, it is important to get intensive care training. It is important. Emergency room training. We want to be able to make sure that that experience is meaningful. Relationship with a preceptor, a relationship that the hospital takes ownership of, that evaluation of the student is appropriate. Not just a quick check off, yes, he did that, yes, he did that. Assisted in intubation one time. That's to make sure that they have the skills that are necessary, hours that are necessary. I was much younger, the number of hours that were required for clinical rotation was much higher. And COAC used to establish those hours. Long since removed the hour requirement and said appropriate number of hours. that left it up to the schools to determine what was clinical education and what was not. That included laboratory and simulation hours too. This is a work in progress. This is where we have to have work to be able to put in language that strengthens all those things. Our students come out of the education experience ready to work. Employers will say, we want to make sure that we have those people that are educated. So how else can we push forward the idea of having a baccalaureate program if in fact same old rehashing of what was an associate program and does not advance the knowledge, advance the training, make the employer understand that our responsibility to ensure that some of these things relative to education committees will hash out and make the plan and put in ways in which we could do that so that we can go forward well with either legislative things in order to enforce those things. Any questions, comments from the audience? Having seen none, I would like to ask for a motion to, accept this continuing education idea and educational objectives.
I think we're okay. Part of the strategic plan, so we don't really need a motion.
Okay. We need a vote though? No? Okay. Moving on. I don't have Dr. Lewis here sending me public comment. On my shoulder, he's here on my shoulder.
He's probably
reminding
watching.
me. Okay. Next item is election of officers, and we'll start with the vice president. And I, as president, would like to nominate Tom to continue his efforts because he's been a great help to me and to Stephanie and the board with his experience as an educator and as an active therapist and all-around knowledgeable guy. So,
No, I totally support your.
We have a second here. She seconded.
Judy seconded.
okay.
We
Are
vote.
there any other nominations for the vice president? Do I have to ask for a comment for that?
Just a public comment on that? Voting for vice president and president?
Yes, public comments are required.
Okay. Do we have any public comments from the audience? Any further discussion from board members? Seeing none,
Aye.
call for a vote.
Aye.
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 And aye.
Mark, did you vote?
Yes, I did. I said
Okay.
aye.
Sorry, I missed it. I don't know how I was looking right at you.
The floor for nominations for president.
I'd like to nominate Alan Roth for president.
Second.
Discussion? I appreciate the fact of continuing, and I hope that I am adequately representing this board and this profession best of my ability.
Just like to make a comment, Mr. President. I as a board member, a public member, are very grateful that a person like yourself with your big background has stepped forward to lead this group. And it's a tremendous time commitment, and it's really a labor of love. And I just wanted to give you my gratitude for doing what you're doing and making the rest of us look pretty good.
Thank you. Thank you. I really love this, and I think looking in the long view, for those of us who've been practitioners for a while, all that I always heard was, "Oh, why did you go into respiratory? The profession is dying. You don't. Why did you choose that? Why didn't you go into nursing?" And when people say that, all those things, and I say, I love this profession. I'm proud of this profession. I'm proud of what I do for the patients. I'm proud of what I educate people about, and that if I can make that to a larger audience, I think that all of us, that's important to be able to do. We've moved incrementally across the board, and even the whole idea that we're talking now about baccalaureate degrees, master's degree, advanced practice. Yes, it's been around a while, but now it's starting to almost be within a reach to be able to say that. And for the fact that, 2 community colleges are now offering baccalaureate programs, in the state of California, and I see it as a stronger workforce moving forward, and what we need to do is to support them as best as we can, and both from a regulatory standpoint, a legislative standpoint, and if necessary, a disciplinary standpoint, to weed out those people that maybe have made the wrong decisions relative to the field to which they're in. Having said that, I will ask for any public comment to anyone in the audience. Being none, I will put it to a vote for myself as president for the next year.
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion passed. Okay, next item is 10, is to look on the calendar for next year's meetings. One thing, Mark, can you tell us a little about the CSRC meeting in Monterey next year? I believe that's the 50th anniversary of the CSRC.
It is, and it'll be it'll be in May. It'll be a real, well, Monterey has been, the scene of, about once every 10 years of celebrating the profession. And this will be a very big one. In fact, I believe I've heard that on the CSRC logo, it'll be changed from green to gold. State of California, so which is, since it is the golden anniversary.
I think that our previous meetings at the CSRC meetings were very productive for people to come in and hear the board meetings and have students and therapists understand things to which we do. And to just digress a little, the whole idea of thinking about one of the things that came up in the strategic plan was about offering CEUs for therapists to be able to come to board meetings. I mean, educational group, I think that we should consider that as part of our plan. But I think that if we can, is that May 11th that's circled on the thing, is that the same?
No, it's May, the CSRC, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, the meeting is May 13th to 15th. And so May 11th was circled in essence to kind of put it together, but if you want to actually have it at the same time, we can try to get it at the same place. I don't know contracts and the costs of Monterey if we can do that, but if we can, if the board is willing, we can make it on a Monday or Tuesday or Sunday. What is it? Yeah, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, 13th, 14th, and 15th of May. If you want to make it one of those days.
I think that if it is possible and it's fiscally possible, that it's not outrageous in order to do. I know in the planning phases, this is a real short amount of time if we're talking about May.
Fine.
You know,
I think this board has been very instrumental in protecting both the consumers and also protecting the consumers by advocating the growth of this profession. I think would be very nice to be there and be available to the attendees to be able to show them what we're currently doing. Yeah. Public outreach.
Just an FYI, the 13th of May is Mother's Day, if that makes any difference to anyone. But I think I would love if we could have our meeting down there on the 14th or 15th and have people come from the CSRC. I think it would be a wonderful way to let them come in and see what we really do, because so many RCPs just think all we do is take their money. And I think if they really understood what we're all about, and that how we're there to protect the public, and that how we're there to make sure that we keep their reputation whole, because with a few bad apples, the reputation of the whole discipline can go down. So I think it's really important. If we can be there, that'd be great. And I'll forego Mother's Day.
If I could add the concern about the logistics at the meeting, because I know that a lot of planning has already taken place in regard to the schedule of events and activities that take place at the state meeting. So if we could possibly get a hold of Marianne Shaw or Abby Rosenberg at the CSRC and discuss the possibilities with them to see if they have time in the schedule and a venue in order to host us.
What's my next question? So far, I've heard about 4 of you really on board with this. I just want to make sure, like, are we open to maybe doing an evening meeting, even if it means doing it that late to have people appear? Or are you available Monday and Tuesday, those days, the other committee members?
I am.
I would be, as long as we have a hotel room, don't have to drive home.
I'd be open to an evening meeting.
Make myself available.
Anybody else? Monday and Tuesday, May 14th and May 15th, just for one of those days.
I think Monday would be, it's the middle day, because some people, if the 15th is the last day, sometimes sessions end and then people check out of hotels and they're gone.
Yeah, I prefer Monday as well.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Are we open to input on the other dates? Locations?
Sorry?
Are we open to discussing the other locations? Yes. Sat on the board for quite a few years, and seems to be a growing interest in the central part of the state. Wondering, instead of Sacramento, would there be a possibility of doing Fresno or somewhere down in that area? It is a growing area with 2 new college campuses, UC in that Central Valley. So.
Yeah, we can do Fresno if everyone else is open to it. It's going to be the traveling board.
No, I'm talking about the fall
Okay.
Meeting that's essentially scheduled for Sacramento.
I think that is appropriate to look at a venue like that, and I know in the past, like when we were at UCLA, we used the facility of the hospital, able to have the meeting, that we could potentially do one of the colleges or one of the hospitals there for having the meeting in order to be able to get some participation of therapists during the day. So I would say, yeah. Any preference relative to the in October?
That's Fresno, right? And then February, Southern California. Is there a preference for Southern California?
I'm sorry, which one are we talking about? February?
Can we start at the beginning? Can we zero in on a date in February?
Okay, yeah.
Okay,
October I'm open, and February I'm open. Early February would be great.
So we're doing February 2nd or the 9th. That's kind of what we're proposing. Do either of those work? Do either of those not work for anybody? So let's do the 2nd. Is that okay?
okay.
Okay, that one's going to be held in Southern California. Is there a preference in Southern California? We do San Diego. I feel like we've done it a lot, but I could be wrong. I'm thinking about UCLA again.
Something place in
San Diego is always beautiful.
LAX is a mess. San Diego.
What did you say, Mary Ellen?
something like.
I'm trying Anaheim,
What
Orange,
about like
Orange.
Long Beach or
Long Beach,
somewhere?
Okay.
So, you know, not quite LA, but LA-ish.
Great.
To the 2nd of February.
Yep. And then we're going to do May 14th, ideally in Monterey with the CSRC, if we can arrange it. If not, I don't know what we'll do. We will talk about that, you and I, Ellen. And
Should we have a backup? Like if it doesn't work for May 14th, should we choose another day that would be a
a
possibility?
good idea. If it doesn't, okay, we won't even go there. Yes, we'll have a backup. So let's do a June date, 1st, 8th, 15th, 22nd, or 29th. Or do any of those days not work for anybody?
Last Friday is always bad for me, but it seems to always turn out to be the last Friday.
So no 29th.
And I always get involved, so I'll be there even if, it's not that I can't make it, it's just not convenient.
Oh, well, why don't we just do 22nd, then eliminates the last Friday, then we don't,
That's great.
no problem.
And that's a backup.
That's
Which
plan
day?
B.
22nd of June.
Okay, 22nd is a backup teleconference. And our fall meeting that will be held in Fresno now is the options that are put forth are October 19th, October 26th, and November 2nd. Do any of those dates not work for anybody? So let's go with October 19th, if that's okay.
Okay. Good. So we have February 2nd in Southern California. We have May 14th with the potential backup of June 22nd. Have October 19th.
Yep, that is correct, in Fresno.
Just Mr. President, on that one, just maybe public comments on the calendar. The public does have a right to input.
Person here.
Understand that, but
Okay.
it's just for the record.
For the
sir.
record. Any public comments relative to the schedule or the conference locations?
No.
Seeing none? Why don't we take a break before we move on to the
Uh,
Oh, Mr. President, just, do you want to go over item 11 first before we go on break? Public comments not on the agenda?
Okay. I will open up to public comments on items not on the agenda. Is there any public comments or any discussion on items that would want to put on for future agenda items?
I'm not public, but I just wanted to say something, and this should be obvious to every respiratory school when our dates of our meetings are. But if we go to Fresno, which I think would be wonderful, is there some way that we can reach out to the respiratory colleges in those areas and suggest that they bring their students to the meeting for a day? I think it might be a great educational tool for the schools to bring their students to the board meeting before they get the negative feeling of, oh, this is about money, that it's about education, it's protecting the public and protecting their reputations.
When we were at Loma Linda, the school brought and the faculty brought all their students there that day. We had a full house that day of students from Loma Linda.
I'd like to see that with every college where we go, though.
Let us take a 10-minute break. We are going to be in closed session, so we will now close the public videotaping of the meeting and go into closed session.